Alright, hello everybody, and welcome to my first NCAA 14 Dynasty for YouTube. Certainly not my first in real life. Hopefully will not be my last. But we're going to start with New Mexico State Aggies. A friend of mine recently asked me, he's getting into the NCAA 14 games. His favorite team is Florida International, and he asked me how to build up a team basically from the ground up. And it's something I've done before, but I figured since he wanted to know, it'd be something I thought other people might want to know too. So I decided I'd go ahead and do this dynasty, share what I know with you guys. I'm not a great NCAA 14 player. I think I'm pretty good. I know the game of football very well. I've done coaching and stuff before, and I've played, so I know my way around it. And I've got a few tips and tricks with recruiting that maybe you guys don't know, and in gameplay as well. So again, a lot of the stuff I say you probably already know or you're aware of, but hopefully some of the stuff I say maybe helps you that you don't know, and lets you be a little bit better. And hopefully some of my gameplay is enlightening too. So yeah, we're going to pick the New Mexico State Aggies. They are a 65 overall team. They have 67 overall offense and 65 defense. So they're pretty much at the bottom. I think the only two teams worse than them are Idaho and Georgia State. And I don't want to play those two teams because they are pro-style offenses or one-back offenses. And I play enough of that in my regular dynasties. So I figured I'd take a change. I usually do running teams, and New Mexico State plays the spread, so it'll be a change. They're still pretty bad, so it's not that much of a difference in the long run because they suck. So I think the main thing I'm going to try and focus on in this dynasty is recruiting. Gameplay is kind of going to be secondary because in order to build the school from the ground up, you have to have good recruiting. So I'm going to kind of share with you how I do that, how I go through recruiting, and what I do to build up small schools, because I have done this before. And maybe, I know a lot of you guys, and I used to be one of these guys too, certainly in other games, recruiting was even easier in my opinion. And you'd be a really small school, and you'd be able to get really big recruits really quickly, and it was just too easy. And in this game, certainly the bigger recruits, if you're a crap school, they're not going to go there. You can put all the points you want into them. They're just not going to go there. They're going to pick Alabama over you all the time. And, I know that didn't used to be the case because I did a Texas San Antonio dynasty in NCAA 2013. And, I got a 5-star recruit year one because I just pitched an hour at him and gave him all these promises and such and such and such. And, it was a little silly looking back on it, but I know you can adjust the recruiting difficulty and everything, but we're trying to be realistic here. So I'm just picking my coaching upgrades here. For both offense and defensive coordinators, I just picked the one that gives you increased stamina and decreased injury. Because for a team like this, low rated, you're not going to have good injury ratings or good stamina ratings. So you really want to do that, especially with all the hurry up on the other team's offense and spread up-tempo offense for New Mexico State themselves. So you're going to want to have that to start off with. And head coach, I just do all recruiting to start off with. I max out the scouting one because you want to be able to fully scout guys and you pay that. You don't want to have to pay those points twice. And then I did the one that gives me more points for weeks 1 through 7. So pretty basic stuff. I only started him at level 5 because I'm pretty sure the current coach was even a higher level than that. But I wanted to use a new coach, pick the upgrades that I wanted, and just kind of basic start there. So nothing too big. Kind of going to dive into the recruiting board now. And my tips for how to recruit for small schools is this. This is how you should start recruiting. Speed, speed, speed. And offensive line and cornerbacks and safeties. And the reason I say that, and a good kicker too. The reason I say that is because, especially with such a low-rated team, if you have a bad offensive line, which more than likely your offensive line is subpar at 67 offense, you're going to get pressured a lot, and they're going to break through the gaps a lot, and you're going to be running for your life on throw plays, and it's going to be really hard to establish an inside running game, let alone an outside running game, if you don't have a good offensive line. And with the spread offense, you really, really need that. So that's big. And in quarterbacks and safeties, this is my big thing. This is my biggest tip for starting small schools is, again, recruit speed at these positions because, okay, yeah, you'll recruit a guy, maybe he's got, high 50s, low 60s, mid 60s coverage skills at corner or safety. And, at the Sun Belt level of competition, which is what the New Mexico State Aggies are at, that's not even that bad. But if you can get him in the 80s and even 90s in the speed on certain guys, I would almost sacrifice coverage skills in your first couple years for speed, just for this reason. Because, he might not always make the play, but he's going to be in the play. He's not going to get burnt over the top because he's got good speed. He might not get burned on a slant route because he's going to stay with the receiver. And, again, he might not make the play. He might not make the tackle. But he's going to be in position to make the play as opposed to another guy who's got, okay coverage skills, but he's slower than dirt. And he's getting burned over the top all the time. So at least put yourself in position to make the play. As the wins start coming, you can start getting guys that are faster and have better coverage skills. But, you're a one-star prestige team, offense 67, defense 65. It's not going to be there immediately. And obviously the same thing goes for the safeties. You don't want them to get burned over the top. They're going to be in the plays, give you a chance to make a play. So that's kind of gonna what you're gonna see me recruiting for. As I set up my recruiting board, I'm gonna pick guys that you look at them and you're like, okay, maybe that's not the greatest coverage skill, but again, you have to keep in mind this is a 65 overall team, one-star prestige. You're not going to get the greatest coverage skill. But again, it might be like, well, you could even do better with your situation. But they're fast, and they're going to stay in plays. And even against teams that are better than you, with how fast they are, they're going to be able to be in the play. And, I know all you guys hate it when, I know you've all been a part of it, myself included, when you're running man coverage and you run press and, he runs a go route and he's gone. And, these kind of corners might be able to keep up with him, or the slant route might be able to keep up with it, or certainly those post routes to the sidelines against man or sometimes zone. It's just annoying as all hell to have that keep going off against you. So that's why I said recruit speed, keep yourself in the plays. As I just do a couple basic things here, one of the things you're obviously going to want to remember is turn the computer recruiting strategy off, because you don't want the computer yeah, you don't want the computer doing stuff for you. And, as I go through the recruiting board, as I said, you're going to see speed. And another thing you're going to see is one of the other tips I have that I know a lot of guys that I know overlook or they just completely don't know about is JUCO players. And one of the things about JUCO players that I really like is they're really underrated. What you'll find is that most JUCO players are 2 or 1-star recruits, and but you look at their stats and hey, these are pretty good. And you'll see further down the line when I add a couple of them to my board here for this example as I'm saying it. But what I like to do, especially with smaller schools, is find JUCO wide receivers, and the reason they're so good is because you look at them and they're 1 to 2-star recruits, maybe in the mid-60s overall, but you look at their speed and wow, these guys got blazing speed. And suddenly, I mean, you look at it and it's 94, 92, 93, 91 speed on a 2 to 1 star recruit, mid 60s overall. You know, the catching ratings are in the 60s, they're average, but it's somebody you can easily recruit. It's not a 3-star, 4-star recruit that you're not going to get. And, you know, you can recruit those guys, and especially against, you know, Sun Belt Conference USA type competition you'd be going up against initially. These guys are going to make big plays for you because they're so fast. It's just like recruiting speed on the defensive side, where they're going to be in the play. These guys are going to make plays. And one of the things you can do that I sometimes do is if you don't have an immediate need at the wide receivers position, one of the things you can do is actually recruit these really fast JUCO guys and redshirt them, bring them in, redshirt them, and let them improve their stats again. And they'll come in with 2 years of eligibility now, and they'll have 97, 98, 96 speed, in the 70s, low 70s in their catch ratings, and that makes out to be a pretty damn good wide receiver. And, you know, against the level of competition you'd be facing, you're going to end up burning a lot of people and making really big plays. And so that's one thing to look out for. You know, maybe add a couple of those guys to your board. Certainly as you get going, as you become a bigger dynasty, you'll be able to get guys that are 3-4 star recruits that are fast and have good catch ratings. So, but that's always something to look out for as you start. And as you can see here, I'm just kind of going through the scouting board, just finding guys, looking for a quarterback right now. My only my starter's a junior, so I'm just looking. I always go through every position to see who's interested in me and look at potential other positions because, you know, I might not have a need for the guy, but if he's good and he's interested in my school, then yeah, I'm probably going to recruit him. And one of the things I might have already mentioned, but you certainly need to keep in mind as you do recruiting, and this goes for any school, not just building up a small school, but it helps, is, you know, every year you're going to have your team needs. Obviously you want to fill those, but what you also want to do is look down the road and see what you're going to need in the future. Because, you know, you might not need a kicker in your first recruiting because you've got one kicker and he's a junior, but there might be an 83 overall kicker on the board who is interested in your school, and you're like, well, I don't need a kicker, so I don't need to recruit him. Go ahead and recruit the guy, because next year you're going to have a need for a kicker, and you can just get this guy, you know, be preemptive with it. But what you can do is get him, bring him in, redshirt him while your other guy plays, unless he's a lot better than him, but redshirt him while he plays. Then he's going to come in with 4 years. You're not going to have to recruit him the next year, and he's going to be even better because he's improved his stats for a year. So that kind of thing is always something to think about. And another note on the kickers really is no matter what size school you are, you can always get a good kicker. And, you know, you look at these guys and they're all interested in the SEC schools and they're in the 80s overall on their kickers, but you can get these guys no matter what size of school you are, because really what they care about is, you know, usually almost always playing time, proximity to home, and, you know, maybe conference prestige or something. So maybe you have 2 good pitches and 1 not so good. But you can get these guys because you'll have 2 good pitches. They may even be pipeline, but you can dump a bunch of points into them, offer them scholarships. A lot of schools don't offer kicker scholarships on this game, and that's big. And it's not surprising. That's really one of the only positions right out of the gate you can get a top player in, no matter how small your school is a kicker, because they just care about playing. And especially if you have a team that's not great at offense, you might be kicking a lot of field goals. So that's certainly something to consider. And as you'll see here, I'm going to end up targeting a few kickers that are rated in the 80s. And as I start the season, they're going to be guys I'm going to go after and, you know, be in the mix to get. And it's not, I didn't cheese it or anything. I mean, I'm only going to end up being able to put 500 points into them, but I'm going to be in the mix for these guys because, as I said, you know, kickers and punters are the kind of guys that no matter how good they are, you can always get them when you're, no matter what side of the school you are. So that's something you'll want to look at too. Don't just go for the kickers that are interested in your school, and this really goes for any players, but the kickers especially starting out. You don't have to go for the ones that are interested in your school. Sort it by the caliber. Look at the highest guys. Look at the pitch info, and if you have a good pitch info on them, go for them. You could get them easily. Because again, a lot of these schools won't offer them scholarships. They won't put a bunch of points into them. And if you schedule a visit for them, there's a good chance you'll kick some field goals and be able to get those visit points. And, obviously if you bring that recruiting battle into the off season, if you haven't won it by then, you could dump a bunch of points into them and get them. So that's something I really recommend doing. Because having a good kicker really, really helps. Especially if you have bad special teams, you don't have to worry about returns a lot. And you can kick longer field goals. There are certain fourth downs you're not going to have to go for anymore. And it's a big deal. As you can see here, I'm just adding on punters and everything. And, I fill up my board, usually. I fill up my board, 35 guys. And what I do is I'll use the preseason scouting points. And I'll just scout all these guys at all the positions. And I'll just weed out the guys who are worse. Like if I need 2 defensive ends, I've got 6 of them on the board. I scout all of them. I get rid of the guys that obviously I don't want, bring it down to 2 or 3 guys, and then just go after those guys. And maybe mid-season, if one of them's dropped out of, if I've dropped out of the race for one of them, you can get rid of them too and focus on other guys. But yeah, you'll want to do that, and a lot of the times you'll want to add multiple guys for positions you need, and maybe even ones you don't, just to scout them, because certain guys might look like gems, so they're always worth scouting. And the best example I can think of is like a center. One guy might say he's really good at run block. One guy might say he's really good at pass block. One guy might say he's balanced. You only need one center for your team need. But you put all 3 of those guys on there. You scout them all out, and maybe the pass block guy is actually a gem, and he's got a pretty good run block rating, and obviously he's got a higher pass block rating than the other 2, and you end up going after that guy instead of the other 2. So you want to give yourself options. You don't want to force yourself into being only with the guys who are interested in you, and only the guys who are initially rated overall higher, because a lot of the times what you'll find is guys who are what they're rated certainly is not what they end up being, and many times it's lower than what they're listed at. And so you don't want to be committed to that guy and then realize mid-season you'd be like, oh, this other guy was a gem and I didn't go after him. And so there's that. And you don't have to pick up certain guys, but a lot of the times what you want to do is put a few guys in. Certainly go through every position and see who's interested in you. But in a lot of positions, don't feel confined to the guys that are interested in your school. Just because they're interested in your school doesn't mean that you're going to have good pitches for them, and it doesn't mean that they're even somebody you want. A lot of the times what I end up doing now is you can go find guys, search them based on their speed, or just look through the list, or that kind of stuff. That's what you really end up doing, is just end up scrolling through the list and go through the highest guys you think you have a reasonable shot at, look at the pitch info, and you'll find a guy that's 3 stars maybe even at a starting school, and you didn't think you could get that guy, but you have good pitches on him, and you could maybe get 260 points a week on the guy, but he didn't have an initial interest in your school. So don't think that defines it, especially on a preseason recruiting board. If you put these guys on your recruiting board and scout them, if they didn't have an interest in you, they'll be interested in you at the start of the season after that. So that helps too. And again, there's 14, 15 weeks of recruiting. It doesn't have to all happen at once. It doesn't have to be, okay, well, he's only got me at 10th now, I have no chance at him. It's not true. I've recruited many guys before who were not interested in me at the start of the season, but I had good pitches on. I put a bunch of points into them. I made smart schedule visits and all that kind of stuff, and you end up getting the guy. So I know a lot of guys do that, and obviously I used to be one of them, speaking from experience, where I'd just pick guys who are interested in me, and I probably missed out on a lot of guys who could be good. So, you know, try and do that. It's really just your discretion on how much you want to put into that, how many guys you really want to look through to see who might be interested in you. I recommend if you're serious at all about the Dynasty, put some time into it. Put time into your recruiting boards because it's big. It shapes what your team's going to be. And, I'd rather spend an extra 10 minutes on my recruiting board with a new school if it helped me find two, 3-star or gem players that I might not have found before just because they weren't interested in my school initially. So you definitely want to do that. As you can see here, I've got my board at 25. I'm just going to end up adding guys from all the positions that I want. And I'll have a guy from like every position probably. Go through, scout them, as I said, get rid of them, get them down to 25 or so, because that's the max amount of scholarships you can even have. So I'm gonna get that going, and really, it's hard to say for the first season because you're limited based on what the team's done in real life, based on their rating and all that kind of stuff, the coach prestige, everything, and it's really going to take until the second season. You're going to really see it pay dividends in the second season on the recruiting board when, I've played a season, I've got new recruits, my team's improved, I have a better coaching prestige, stability, all that kind of stuff. I maybe move up conferences, and that's going to help you get more recruits because you're going to have more wins, you're going to have a better coach, better conference, all that kind of stuff. All that's going to make a big difference. So, initially, you're kind of setting the base for what you want your team to look like, but it's really the years 2, 3, and 4, but 2 and 3 mostly, where you're going to be building the meat of your team. Because obviously by season 3, season 4, most of your starters is going to be guys you've recruited and not the guys that were initially there at the start of the dynasty, which is really when you can start seeing how good you've done it, because at that point, who's on the team is based on your ability as a recruiter and a player. And so it's not going to be perfect season 1, but you'll definitely see progress as we go. And as you see here, I'm just going through like halfbacks and stuff, going through the first 50 or so, checking who might be interested, because you never know. I've done a Navy Dynasty where season 1 there was a 4-star running back who was 76 overall, interested in playing for Navy. Ended up getting the guy, but he wasn't interested in the school initially. And it's one of those things you got to look for. And look at that. You got a 3-star fullback, 74 overall. You got my school 3rd on his list. You never know, because the fullback, he's certainly one of the best fullbacks on the recruiting board, but maybe they don't want to go play for an Alabama or something because they know, okay, I'm probably not going to play much. I come to one of these other schools, they're not as good, but I'm going to play a lot. And especially for positions like fullback and kicker, like I said, it's all about playing time because, they can easily get buried on the depth chart and never do anything. So that's going to work to your advantage initially when you don't have much skill at those positions. As you see, I'm just adding a couple guys. Again, just scouting through these guys, seeing who I want to add, maybe scout on my board. I got a few positions left, but I'll kind of talk ahead right now and catch up to this as it goes. But as I said, recruit speed. That's the big thing you want to do. And don't feel confined to the guys who are interested in you. And think to the future. Recruit your needs ahead of time, not when you have to. Because that'll really help you, because when you recruit your needs ahead of time, instead of when you have to, then you won't feel the need, because you might, depending on how you do it, you might go into the next season without any team needs, and then you can just recruit who you want to, and then it gets fun, and then you start really seeing your team improve, because instead of feeling like you have to put 6 scholarships and a bunch of points towards certain guys, you can be like, okay, I don't have any needs. I'm going to go after these receivers and these quarterbacks. They're a bit higher rated than I might be able to normally get. But I'm going to go after them aggressively. I'm going to dump a bunch of points into them. I'm going to schedule them. I'm going to take them to the off season. I'm going to dump thousands of points into them, and I'm going to get these guys. And you'll be able to do it. And I really recommend that you do, because that's a quick way, that's a fast track in on improving your team quickly and getting guys you might not normally be able to get. And also not having to bother with doing team needs, because yeah, sometimes you'll want to recruit what the team need is. Like if you need receivers, a lot of guys want to recruit receivers, but nobody really wants to go search for offensive linemen or defensive tackles or punters. You don't want to waste your time with that. So don't do it. Plan ahead. I mean, it's not always going to be perfect, but as you see here, I got this 3-star cornerback interested. Not even interested in my school, but he's got an A rating in speed, that kind of thing. So, as I was jumping off track a little bit there, but yeah, that really helps your team improve, because when you can start doing what you want instead of doing what you have to, which is the case a lot of the times with lower rated schools. Like in Alabama, you pretty much recruit who you want to. Starting off, New Mexico State, you recruit who you have to. And it's really helpful, obviously, to be able to recruit who you want to, because then it's like, here's a bunch of good guys. I picked these 3. So I'm going to go into the next segment here as I wrap up the setup of my recruiting board. I got my 35 targets. I'm going to go find some JUCO wide receivers and kind of show you what I'm talking about when I talk about the speed and the ability of these guys. Alright, hello everybody. And we are in the recruiting stage of I've got my board set up here. We're looking at our guys here, just scouting them. I'm having to voice over because the audio didn't record, so it's not going to be perfect with synchronicity, but I'll get it as close as I can. So we're scouting Logan Rutledge here, that quarterback. He's a gem-looking guy looking for us. Got good speed and acceleration, throw power, throw accuracy, and he's interested in our school. In the 80s in the speed and acceleration, near the 80s in throw power and accuracy, and he's got a good juke move, and he's pretty elusive. So I'm going to put 5 points on each guy I want to keep on the board for now. Got a couple kickers on the board here right now, just scouting them out. Kind of what the deal is with kickers is no matter what size school you have, you can always get a good kicker, because all they want to do is play. A lot of times they want to be close to home, and the other ones are really dependent, but you can always get a good kicker no matter what your school is. Obviously, New Mexico State's pretty small, and so, good kicker's pretty big. We got this guy pretty middle of the road, 75, 76 on kick power, kick accuracy. This guy's more accurate, but he's got greater power. And we're just trying to scout a few of them here. See, I removed one of the guys already because he was in the 70s and 60s, and if we've got these other 2 guys we have good pitches at, there's no point keeping that guy on the board. So these are going to be our 2 kickers going forward. Got Lewis Cook and Joe Triplett. And as you see here in a second, I'll just be assigning the 5 points to them later. We're looking at some punters because that's one of our team needs. Scouting these 2 dudes out. And you see I've got 2 of them on here, and I only need 1. So I end up getting rid of the 65 overall guy, because A, he's not as good as the other guy, and I don't have as good pitches on him. So I figure, you can go. So he gets removed, and we're going to end up targeting David Stewart as our punter. He's okay, 67 overall. He's got low 70 ratings, mostly for kicking. So now we're going after defensive ends here. We got Courtney Montgomery, and he's going to be a guy we're really going to go after. He's got 81 power move, 75 block shedding. He's going to be a beast on our defensive line. Just scouting most of these guys out, mid-70s and 60s. Kind of go more in-depth in it when I can synchronize my audio again when I get back to week 1 scouting. And so what we did here is we're just putting 5 points again on all the guys we want to keep for now, just to kind of make sure I don't have to look over the same guys multiple times and end up removing some guys, because we started with 35 guys on the board. And again, I always recommend doing that, 35 guys on the board, and scout them out. Obviously you're going to remove them, so it'll get down to at least 25 pretty quickly, which is the max scholarships you can have. But a lot of the times, especially with a smaller school like this, where you don't have many recruiting points, and you really want to get certain guys, you're not even going to get 25 guys because you're going to want to put a lot of points into a few guys, and that's going to really eliminate your ability to compete for 25 prospects. And as I say that, we're just scouting out guys here. Got a lot of defensive tackles and outside linebackers on the board. Just gonna kind of sort through them. Pick a couple guys that seem good in different categories. Scout them out, see what they're really good at. Some might be gems, some might be busts, some might be just as they were predicted. Maybe not very good, but as good as you might get on that sort of a team. And you see here, of course, I'm just checking my needs. I got a lot of defensive needs on this team. A lot of needs just in general. They're low rated on a lot of things, but defense especially. And gonna go back to the board. We're just gonna filter out some guys. I think we'll get it down into the mid-20s, low 20s. So almost the finished product here in terms of what we're gonna be going after this season. And one of the things I end up adding in another little clip here at the end is what I do is mostly for what I'm recruiting, my recruiting strategy is speed, because I'm not going to get a lockdown corner at New Mexico State in the off season before my first year. It's just not going to happen. Or safety that patrols the whole field. They're going to have low coverage ratings, but what I can do, and what you can do in building up a program, is recruit for speed. And so what that means, obviously, is get guys that are really fast. Their coverage might not be great. It might be even high 50s, low 60s, middle 60s, which is probably what it's going to be if you're lucky, in the 70s. But get them in the 80s, maybe even 90 speed if you can. And what you'll end up getting is a guy that he's not going to make the play all the time, but he's not going to get burned. And we're talking about defense here. Like, if you have a cornerback who's got 90 speed on New Mexico State against the level of competition you're facing, he might not make the play all the time, but he's not going to get burned over the top. He's not going to get beat inside on the slant route a lot. The guy might still make the play, but it's not like it's going to be an easy throw. He's going to be with him stride for stride. So those are the kind of things that are important. It'll help you stay in the game, and as your team improves, you can get more skilled players at that position that are fast and have good coverage ratings. But that's a good thing to start with, and it goes for offense too. I know a lot of guys probably they like fast running backs, fast wide receivers, but one of the things that I know a lot of guys will really overlook in the recruiting process, because they always try and go for the big recruits. But I think for smaller schools starting off, some of the best recruits can actually be JUCO wide receivers. And as you'll see in the clip I add after I get through my recruiting board here, I tack on a couple of JUCO wide receivers to the board. What I did finding them is, I looked for receivers. I went into all the prospects. I filtered them by their 40 time. And what you end up doing is you find the fastest guys. You find some JUCO guys, really. And the reason you go for JUCO is because they've already played 2 years, so their stats are going to be higher, quite a bit higher than they would normally be. They're usually a lower recruit status. They're like 1 to 2 stars, and these guys might have really good stats. But they're 1 to 2 stars, as you can see here. These guys are now. Andy Little there at 94 speed, and Sean Harrison with 92. And these are just JUCO wide receivers, 1 to 2 star players. I don't have the greatest pitch value on one of them, but I can realistically get both of them. And their catch ratings are average. But what you can do is one of two things. One, you can bring them in, and they're going to be really fast. And in the level of competition you're facing, which is mostly Sun Belt teams, they're going to burn them. They're going to beat them. You're going to get big plays with these guys over the top. But another thing you can do that I like to do sometimes, especially if you don't have a need at the position immediately, is get these fast JUCO guys in and redshirt them. It's actually an interesting strategy. I know a lot of guys don't go for the JUCO guys normally, and those who do tend to not think of this because they use the JUCO guys as a quick fix or, what have you, but you can redshirt these guys, let their stats improve for another year, and then, the Andy Little and the Sean Harrison might come back in with 2 years of eligibility at 96, 97 speed. And, senior year, they're going to have 99. And against, Sun Belt competition, Conference USA, what have you, they're going to burn guys deep. And again, it's just like the speed at the defensive positions. You're recruiting the speed. They might not always make the play, but in this case, instead of not getting burned, they're going to burn them. I mean, you are going to have plays in the game where you will beat your guy and you can have a chance at a big play. And that's really big because, especially for a 65 or 67 rated offense, if you have a chance at big plays every game with these guys and that helps you score, that's huge. I mean, I know that sounds obvious, but that kind of speed is just, you just can't teach speed. That's why with the lower schools, starting out to build up a team, you got to recruit speed because you just can't teach it. You can teach the catching and stuff will improve over the seasons, but if he starts out as a 77 speed guy or a 72 speed guy, he's never really going to burn guys. He's just going to beat them by running his routes the best way. He starts out as 94 speed. You redshirt him. He comes in with 97 speed. 98 speed is, first season with you, and he's got another one after that. I mean, that guy's going to burn guys. So that's a big thing. Right here at the video, you see I've narrowed down my list. I've got the guys I want on there, and I'm just starting to put on points for the guys I really want to look for. And you see I've got a 74 overall free safety there. He's actually interested in my school. He's really fast. He's got the 93 speed. And he's got some good coverage skills. But again, speed, speed, speed. You know what? I mean, they're going to make plays against you if you're a team rated in the 60s. But as long as you're in those plays, you have a chance at user picks, tackles, all that kind of stuff. Instead of the kind of stuff where, you'll have a guy that can cover maybe in the 70s, but he's got 68 speed, and he's getting burned over the top every other play. So you see, I'm just kind of dumping points into the guys I really, really want, like the guys that I know I'm going to have trouble getting. So I got a pretty fast tight end who can catch pretty well. I obviously dumped my points into those JUCO receivers. Got a good halfback, but what I'm really trying to do is recruit defense and offense. And what I mean by that is defensive backs and offensive line. And basically you want to build your team up from fundamentals, kind of, is basically what I'm saying, because you have to have a good offensive line, especially with a small school. Start recruiting offensive line, because they're not going to be good if you're a 67 overall offense. Your quarterback's going to be under pressure, and especially if you're a spread team, and I mean, you can't get the run going, you can't get the zone read going if you don't have an offensive line. And obviously, I mean, you don't want to be running for your life all the time. You want to be able to set and throw and make plays. So that's big. And defensive line, that's important too. But cornerbacks and safeties, with all the passing that goes on in this game, you want your guys to be able to be in the game, like be able to make a play on most every play. And that'll at least keep you in games. And so that's really kind of the big thing to recruit with. It's not the flashiest thing ever. You're not getting the receivers or the running backs or the quarterbacks, the big guys initially. But these guys are going to let you win because they're going to keep you in the game. And then once you're winning, it's going to be a lot easier to recruit those guys. And trust me, it's a lot easier to play with an okay offense, but a great defense and a good offensive line than it is to play with, really fast receivers, great quarterback, but no offensive line, running for your life, getting sacked all the time, and no running game, obviously. and then you're giving up a bunch of points on defense and you have to score with them every drive. And you don't want to do that. I mean, you might be able to, but if you can't score with them one drive and they score on just about every drive and you miss a drive, that could be the game for you. Whereas if you had a defense, you make some stops, maybe it's a different story. So that's how I go about doing it. And I've done quite a few small school dynasties. And again, I'm by no stretch of the imagination a great NCAA player. I think I know the game of football. I used to play. I've done some coaching kind of stuff. I'm young, but I have done it. And, I think I know the game of football enough to be able to give good opinions on it. And I've certainly done enough recruiting to be able to kind of give you some insight on it. Now, some of the stuff you probably already know, you've probably already heard, but I certainly think some of the tips, some of the strategies I've been giving, maybe but haven't really, it's been an afterthought, or it needs reinforcement for you to understand it, or you just haven't heard before, and obviously glad to help. Certainly if you guys want me to do other things, then if there's certain strategies I haven't covered, but you want me to go over like how to recruit certain guys or how to do certain things in the off season, etc. Feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to do it. I'm doing this really for my own benefit, for fun, and to help other people too. I mean, I say my own benefit because I want to get better at doing this kind of thing so I can do more in the future, but obviously the main point is, share my ideas. Maybe it helps a few people out. Obviously that's great. As you can see here, I'm just kind of polishing off where my points are going to be for the first week, because this is actually the first week of recruiting. I've got the board all set up and everything, and so this is right before the Texas game, which is our week 1 game. So this is going to be the recruiting, and then we're just going to dive right into the games. And one of the big things with recruiting is, especially with a small school, is you really need to micromanage it well, because a lot of the times I see guys doing, and it's sometimes just because they forget or because they don't think about it, which maybe that's the same thing, but still, is that let's say for example you're in a recruiting battle with a guy you really want late in the season, mid-season, and you're down by a couple hundred points, but you've got a bunch of other guys that you need, and you've got all your points tied up, and you don't know how to fit him to max points or something, because maybe he wasn't a guy you were too interested in early on, but now it's getting tight and you really want him. Well, what you can do is check. I mean, if there's guys you're ahead by on a couple thousand points over the next school, I mean, there's pretty much no chance the other school's going to catch up. And even if they may, it's not going to be for at least quite a few weeks. So you can take some points off him, move it around to the other guys. And you're not always going to be ahead, but you don't want to fall too far behind. Because even with Locksmith, there's a certain point where they'll just lock you out entirely. You don't want that to happen. Obviously, you'd like to get most of your recruits committed before the off season, but don't feel like it's a loss if you haven't gotten your guy at the end of the season. Because what you can do is, let's say you have 25 guys on your board, but you've got 22 commits. You got 3 guys going to the off season. It's still a tight battle. That's not a bad thing. You can you get a lot of off-season recruiting points. Now, you'll need to keep that in mind as you use your coach upgrade skills. You want to buy the ones that give you more off-season points. But if you have 2 or 3 guys going into the off-season, you can dump 5,000-6,000 points into each of those guys, and that's going to almost guarantee to get you that guy. So you don't have to get all your guys before the end of the season. In some cases, it's okay not to. It's okay to put more points on another guy and just stay in the recruiting battle with other guys, knowing you're going to be able to go into the off season and just dump thousands of points into that guy and get him. And that's pretty much it in terms of the strategy of how we're going to go about doing this initially. Obviously, things will change as we go. We're probably not going to get all the recruits we want, and certainly as the new seasons progress and we get the guys, we start implementing our recruits into our roster, our things are going to change. We'll be able to recruit different guys, and maybe next year, instead of recruiting so much offensive line and cornerbacks, we can recruit more wide receivers and defensive line kind of thing. Switch it up. Obviously, yeah, you'll want to recruit for your team needs, but another thing to do that I know, certainly some guys do, but I know a lot of guys overlook, and I used to be one of the guys that did this up until recently, is recruit for your future. And that sounds obvious, but what I mean when I say that is, yeah, you'll have every season, it'll say what your team needs, but instead of waiting every season to see that, look ahead. Like if you've got like if it says you don't need a kicker, but your kicker's a junior, and next year it's going to have that as a team need, and there's a couple good kickers on the board now, go ahead and get them. Bring them on while your kicker's a senior, redshirt them, let their stats grow, and then when he's gone, your new guy can come in and play. So that's another thing to do. And, for the most part, a lot of it's just going to be personal preference. You don't obviously have to do what I said. It makes it a lot easier in many instances. It also depends on the kind of team you have. I mean, if you're doing a Georgia State or a Colorado State or a team like that, that's they're more of a pro style offense. Yeah, you're really going to need an offensive line, but New Mexico State, they play the spread, or if you do an air raid team like Old Dominion, I mean, yeah, you'll want to go after receivers. You can make defense a little more secondary, or maybe offensive line and such, maybe a little more secondary because the level of competition you're facing, you'll be able to score with other teams a lot. So it's personal preference. There's certain benefits to each way, certainly, but a lot of the time, I like to go defense just because, again, it keeps you in games. So that's pretty much going to wrap up our recruiting preseason and week 1. We're going to start diving into the season. I won't talk as much about recruiting as the weeks go on just because there's not going to be as much to talk about. But if you guys want to hear certain things, just let me know. But for now, we're just going to kind of be focusing on the games and what we're going to do improving and going forward. And that is it for recruiting. Stay tuned for game 1.